You need a drink.
Oh, no. Water, please.
Yabba water's only for washing. Come on, drink it up.
Wake and Fright is a 1971 Australian film that analyses the ways in which masculinity can be alienated and disrupted due to the combination of unorthodox isolation and questionable personalities. As the film is an exploration of the degradation of one man's psyche, it heavily focuses on how throwing one out of their environment and into an abyss, surrounded by drunken and crazy men, can turn into a bad trip.
You to the Yabba?
Yes.
Staying long?
Yeah, just tonight.
Oh, that's hard luck. Want to see a bit more of the Yabba than that.
You think it's worth seeing?
It's the best place in Australia. Everybody likes the Yabba.
Why?
Well, it's a friendly place. Nobody worries who you are or where you come from. You're a good bloke, you're all right. You know what I mean?
Rose Lucas, in her article Dragging It Out, Tales of Masculinity in Australian Cinema, argues that masculinity is depicted in Wake and Fright as a form of alienation to its central character and the inhabitants of the outback. Firstly, she identifies how the idea of masculinity and its presence in Australian film culture presents a level of unfortunate expectations. This clash in the expectations placed upon Australian masculinity can be seen to exact a significant toll upon male characters in a number of film texts. For example, the emotional and sexual disturbances of John Grant, Gary Bond, in Wake and Fright. John Grant, a British teacher who plans to go to Sydney for his holiday, has to stay in the mining town of Bundayabba, known locally as the Yabba, for a night. After a gambling incident, Grant loses every last penny he has and is stuck in this town surrounded by an arid, unforgiving wasteland and a population of consistently inebriated men.
Come on, the beer's real good here.
Oh, no, Jog, no. I'll pass out if I don't need to.
Well, it's easy to see you're not a yabba man.
A yabba man. A yabba man? You're the yabba man, Jock. The Bond and yabba man.
All right, all right.
Let's get a big boomer over there. Hey, boys, I can only get this game in. Let me wait for it. Hey, you don't get my bloody head off.
Lucas notes that the film shows the profoundly ugly and violent side of the much celebrated attitudes of the conventional Australian masculinity. The mindlessly violent kangaroo hunters are Kotcheff's redesigned portrayal of the noble bushman cinematically defined in George Miller's The Man from Snowy River. Like the cowboys of the Old West, the Australian bushman is depicted as a man who drinks a lot, smokes a lot, and often commits to emotionless acts of fornication and extreme alcohol-fueled acts of violence. This can be seen in some of the conversations with the character of Doc Tyden, portrayed by Donald Pleasance.
Do you mean you don't think the Yabba is the greatest little place on earth?
Could be worse.
How?
Supply of beer could run out. I'm a doctor of medicine. And a tramp by temperament. I'm also an alcoholic. My disease prevented me from practicing in Sydney, but out here it's scarcely noticeable.
Still, she visits me from time to time. When I want her.
Additionally, Gary Simmons, in his essay From the Bush to the Mall, examines how the film is a critique of the notion of shared communal values, and that this is reflected in the isolated location and the deranged population. Fright reveals the Australian rural male as violent, drunken, corrupt, sexist, and racist. Isolation infects male behaviour, the film foregrounding the sterility, loneliness, hostility, and vastness of the landscape. Simmons continues, the audience is immediately immersed in the vista of a flat and arid bush. Against this background, the protagonist is positioned in terms of conflict, the fragility and tenuousness of their existence thrown into relief. The hero, undeterred by possible failure in a hostile or personally suffocating environment, moves into the fabric of the story and struggles against this stultifying rural landscape with its sense of isolation and alienation. What Simmons suggests here is that the cause of the masculine nightmare is not the nature of masculinity itself, rather how the combined masculinity of the inhabitants of the Australian outback is affected by the geographical isolation. This is further identified by the nature of John Grant himself, in the earlier stages of the film, before he is overpowered by the effect of the yabba. Ted Kotcheff's Wake and Fright is a film that deconstructs the notion of masculinity through its use of character and location. The isolation presented in the vast Australian outback is utilised in Kotcheff's film as a psychological trigger that alienates the male population. Their further escape from the horror of the hinterland, that is the outback, is the constant consumption of liquor and excessive gambling, and the sexual and aggressive rituals.